By about the 3-minute mark in this video, it will start to include some spoilers for the Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree DLC. I'm sure you've either heard someone say this line, or maybe you've said this yourself. I beat and enjoyed Elden Ring or Dark Souls, but I didn't know what was going on with the story, or if there even was one. Now, I've played video games my whole life. During my very early childhood, my mom got me a Nintendo 64, then a PlayStation 2 and GameCube. I remember loving the stories and characters in games like Zelda and Ratchet and Clank, or even the small bits of story in Resident Evil games. It wasn't until I played Final Fantasy 7 and 9, though, that I realized the bigger, more vast story could be told in video games. I fell in love with characters like Zidane, Vivi, Cloud, Aerith, Tifa, and I thought stories like that were safe for movies or TV shows. I know others had a similar experience the first time they played Metal Gear Solid, which I unfortunately didn't get around to until last year. I played Dark Souls 1 in 2013 because my friend told me I couldn't beat it. After struggling endlessly and trying to take an unupgraded weapon to Anne Orlando, I eventually overcame. With my first playthrough complete, however, I couldn't tell you a single thing about the story. It wasn't until I started replaying the game and watching Epic Name Bro that I discovered there were real stories here. As many of you know, hitting the magic square button, or X if you're on Xbox, gives you a description of any item you're hovering over. The description will, describe the item, but will also give some story bits relating to it. Some items obviously give juicier details than others, but if you read enough of them, or watch hours of YouTube lore videos that compile them, you'll understand that not only are there stories here, but there's really interesting and deep ones. The story of characters like Artorias, Slave Knight Gale, and Hoarah are some of my favorite ever told in video games, and that's with having played most of the big story games you can think of. I also love the long and immersive RPGs with fully fleshed out characters. Despite that, these FromSoft game stories still stand out to me alongside the best of those. Godfrey, true name Hoarah, was the first Elden Lord, chieftain of the Badlands, formidable enough to become the first consort of America, won wars for her versus the Fire Giants, used the lion on his back to suppress his true power so that he could be a more reasonable lord. When he was cast away and became tarnished, he climbed all the way back up to the Erdtree to be the last to stand in our way to battle for the right to be Elden Lord. He even gives us respect after we defeat him. While leaving out a ton of details, you can see how that's just absolute cinema. So you might ask yourself, if FromSoft has stories like that, and even deeper ones, in their games, why did they hide them away in item descriptions? Why don't they put that writing and world building in our face so that for many players it doesn't go to waste? Now, I enjoy games like Until Dawn and Life is Strange, or the Telltale Walking Dead games, where they're so story and cutscene focused that they're almost like interactive movies or shows. I also love the long cutscenes and story-driven games like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth or Metal Gear Solid. I also love games like Hades and Resident Evil 4 where they don't lean into as much storytelling, but have me constantly engaged by their gameplay. With that being said, I feel like FromSoft structures their games to where we get to decide, do we simply play the game, which is non-stop engaging gameplay with challenging areas and bosses, or do we stop a lot to read item descriptions to really add context to the world we're exploring, to the bosses we're battling? It's all up to us, and for many of us, we missed all that our first time around. But through falling in love with the game itself, we dug deeper until we became lore fanatics, popping off with every new juicy item description, theorizing about what new revelations we're going to get in the next DLC, and patiently waiting for the big lore YouTubers to upload videos on those DLCs. Let me know in the comments what FromSoft game has your favorite lore, and what character in that game do you think has the best story? Also, were you satisfied with what we ended up getting in the Elden Ring DLC? Me personally, I'm really happy we now know more about Miquella and Marika. I'm also really interested in the whole pact going on, spoiler alert, with Miquella and Radahn. I was also really happy with how the lore of Mesmer turned out, and was pleasantly surprised by the lore of some other bosses like Bale or Midger, Lord of Frenzy Flame. Mohg's follower Ambash and the revelations of what was really going on with Mohg and Miquella were satisfying new details as well. I also love the new questions that got raised with the DLC that, we can theorize about, these big YouTubers can theorize about. I feel like it's so amazing, and, they might answer those questions, they might not. And part of the appeal of the FromSoft lore and stories and stuff like that is they do leave a bit up to interpretation as well. So we're kind of allowed to imagine, what answers appeal to us the most, I am pretty disappointed, though, that we didn't get any huge payoffs with Godwin's lore. But I guess as Goblin fans, we're always in denial about his soul really being dead. Regardless, I feel like FromSoft always does a good job with the stories in their games, and delivered once again with the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC. I'm looking forward to what they do next, whether it be, you know, a new IP, whether it be Bloodborne 2, Sekiro 2, that'd be cool. I don't know if they'll do Dark Souls again, but regardless, I'm really looking forward to what they do next. I feel like somehow, despite making all these bangers, Miyazaki is still really motivated and, you know, really driven to make even bigger and better games. I wonder if the next game will be huge and open world, or if we'll have a more, you know, linear kind of set on the path experience with some more optional stuff, like you know, their other games like Dark Souls, Sekiro, stuff like that. I wonder if they'll revisit, you know, the way that we do combat in Sekiro, or if they'll just keep going with the way it is in Dark Souls and Elden Ring and stuff. Let me know as well. You know, I'm kind of getting into like a ramble here. Yeah, y'all. I mean, I just love FromSoft games. They're awesome. They're definitely, I would say, obviously, growing up, I was very fond of, you know, the Final Fantasies, the Zeldas, stuff like that. But definitely in like the 2010s and now going into the 2020s, FromSoft is my GOAT developer. You know what I'm saying? They're my GOAT. I love the way they do their games. And like, you know, the topic of this video, I love the way they do their stories. I love how it's like optional. You can read it. You can theorize. People compile the descriptions into big lore videos and tell it like tell a story based off of that. I just love it. It's awesome. And I know a lot of y'all do as well. You know, there's a big audience for it. And I hope Miyazaki keeps it up for a long time. We're really in an age where a lot of games, they, you know, feel kind of soulless, feel kind of lifeless. It feels like, you know, the developers, they were just tasked with, oh, you got to make this game or you got to make that game, and you got to make it a certain amount of hours, certain amount of content so we can hit that $70 plus tax price tag. But with FromSoft, it feels different, man. It feels like, you know, Miyazaki, he really wants to make these games. Everyone else working at FromSoft really wants to make these games. They're really passionate about it. They're really passionate about the story and lore they put in. They're really passionate about, you know, how they can advance each game. Like, you know, starting with Sekiro with like the dragon fight and some other stuff in that game, they've started getting more cinematic, and then you see more of that in Elden Ring. And, you know, the build variety and all that, it keeps getting crazier, all the options we have in the game. And again, like I said with Sekiro, they messed around with a whole new combat system. So it feels to me like these are games they want to make, and obviously these are games we want to play, so hopefully they keep going for a while. They're definitely some of the most refreshing games to play in the current, you know, gaming landscape. And I'm really happy that one day my friend told me that I couldn't beat Dark Souls, and my ego was like, I can beat any game, you know what I mean? Like, I'm really glad that happened, because now, you know, I'm such a fan. I love these games. I'm always waiting for the next one. And if you watch this video to the end, I appreciate y'all. Much love. And I will keep going with the Elden Ring content later.